watch list have been caught by the Customs and Border Patrol, and there's no telling how many others have gotten away. Fentanyl is now the #1 killer of Americans 18 to 45 years old. It doesn't take a genius to figure out that it's being smuggled into this country across our southern border. The cartels are becoming billionaires thanks to the Biden administration's open border policy. The Biden administration can't keep ignoring the problem and hope it goes away. It's never worked before, and it's not about to start now. Like my colleagues here, I've been to the border many times, unlike President Biden, who said last week there were more important things in the world to deal with than seeing what's happening at our southern border. It's clear that a change is needed. Impeaching Secretary Mayorkas is the essential first step to secure our southern border. Come January, Mayorkas is going to have a lot to answer for. Thank you. Who's next?
Rodney Scott.
Right now, former U.S. Border Chief Rodney Scott. Rodney, there you are.
Thank you. I'm going to keep my remarks pretty short. I was the chief of the United States Border Patrol when Alejandro Mayorkas became Secretary of Homeland Security. I learned very quickly not to trust Alejandro Mayorkas. His actions behind closed doors did not match his actual actions, or his statements behind closed doors didn't match his actions or what he stated to America. As an example, in March of 2021, you'll remember he went on all the Sunday talk shows, and then he told everybody that the border was closed and the border was secure. And then I was given talking points. I was supposed to say the same thing. Not only did I refuse, I questioned that statement, and I was told, almost a quote, "We thought you would like hearing that." Well, I'm here to tell you today that the truth isn't about what anybody likes. The truth should be about facts and evidence, and that statement was not true then. I pushed back against it then, and I know for a fact the Secretary got reports every day that proved that was not taking place. Every day that the Secretary goes out and tells America the border is secure, he's lying to them. Worse than that, when you go before Congress and testify the border is secure, I think that deserves impeachment. Thank you.
Greg Stubbe.
98. 98 is the number of the known terrorists that have been let into our country. I had the opportunity to serve our country in the military, and I served as the chief of detainee operations for Multinational Division North. So I know a little something about terrorism, and I know a little something about fighting terrorism. And in the Judiciary Committee, when we asked Secretary Mayorkas, did you release these known terrorists into our country? Not only did he say no, he refused to answer the question, which tells you everything that you need to know. The 98 known terrorists on the terrorist watch list are now released into our country. I can't think of a higher crime than releasing known terrorists into our country. And it's time that we stand up. This administration has been intentionally and deliberately violating federal law at the border every single day. And now with a Republican majority, we're going to hold them accountable and impeach Secretary Mayorkas and bring change and shut the border down. Thank you.
Thank you, Congressman Stubbe, and thank you, Congressman Biggs and Congressman Babin, for leading on this issue and demanding desperately needed accountability. The out-of-control crisis at our southern border is indeed a self-inflicted wound by the Biden administration, by their harmful open border policies. For the past 2 years, Democrats here in Washington have turned a blind eye to the chaos that they have created. As brave Customs and Border Protection agents manning the crisis are left to bear the brunt of the left's severely misguided agenda. The result is that every community across our country becomes a border town, and hundreds of Americans die every single day from fentanyl overdoses. Fentanyl, one of the most addictive and deadly drugs being aggressively smuggled over the open border. Americans simply deserve better. You and I deserve better. They deserve a safe and secure nation, and they deserve accountability. I advise Secretary Mayorkas to clear his calendar, because accountability is exactly what's coming when House Republicans retake the majority on January the 3rd. I look forward to working with my colleagues in the 118th Congress to fully expose Secretary Mayorkas' atrocious decisions, and then to impeach him for his devastating and willful dereliction of duty. This is for certain. Secretary Mayorkas is responsible, and therefore he must go. Thank you, and I yield to the gentleman from Alabama, Congressman Barry Moore.
Thank you, Chairman Biggs and Chairman Babin. In the private sector, if you don't do your job, you get canned. Each of you in the media would agree with that, I think. In October, there were 230,678 illegal immigrants encounters at our southern border. That's more than the total population of the largest city in my home state, Alabama. Does that sound like the Secretary of the Homeland Security, Mayorkas, is doing his job? If the president won't fire Mayorkas, Congress needs to do it for him. The truth is, President Biden doesn't seem to care about this border. He said last week he had more important things to tend to deal with. His press secretary lied and said Biden had been to the border. I've been a couple of times myself. I'd encourage him and his whole administration to go down and take a look at just the travesty that is the southern border. The American people care deeply about the drugs pouring across the southern border, the fentanyl, the human trafficking, the impact that it is having on our communities. Republicans must hold this administration accountable by impeaching Mayorkas. One way or the other, Mayorkas must be fired. With that, I'll yield to former U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director Tom. Oh, we're going to yield it. Randy Weber from Texas.
I thank the gentleman. Some of y'all heard me speak at the last press conference. I spent 4 years in the Texas House. I was on the Border Committee, my last term vice chairman. It was unsafe then. 5,000 Texans were hurt, killed, maimed, raped, robbed, stolen, homes burglarized. It's still unsafe now, worse because of Mayorkas. We are facing an invasion at the southern border at the hands of Secretary Mayorkas. Mayorkas knows full well that the border crisis has endangered the entire country. Facts, folks, here's the facts. He simply does not care. Simply does not care. He doesn't care about families at the border. He doesn't care for that fentanyl is pouring across our border. He doesn't care about our sovereignty as a nation. He just flat doesn't care. Our border is an absolute, complete nightmare, and it's on his watch. Texans are sick of this, and the American people are getting sick of this. And we are no longer turning a blind eye. It's been said here, Secretary Mayorkas has acted with impeachable conduct. Impeachable conduct. He has failed to secure our border and has thus endangered Americans. He has failed in so many ways, and in doing so, he has violated the very oath he took to uphold the Constitution and to protect this great country. Mayorkas is bad for Texas. Mayorkas is bad for America. Mayorkas is bad at his job, and Mayorkas must go. He's got to go. Like they said, Mr. Mayorkas, like they said, don't take the list of the next speakers. Sorry about that. Thank you. They said he's got to go, and accountability is on the way. Stay tuned. Thank you.
Thanks, Andy. Thanks for putting this together, and thanks for all these great patriots for being here. And Mark Morgan, my good friend, who was head of Border Patrol under President Trump, he knows how to secure the border. We all know how to secure the border. We put out a plan last week, the Texas delegation, the entire delegation standing right here. We know what to do, and that's why we're here right now about Mayorkas. He knows what to do, but yet he's literally refusing to do it, purposefully. With all due respect to my colleagues, this isn't about somebody who is just not getting his job done. This is about a guy who is purposefully endangering the American people and migrants who seek to come here, and he's doing so for crass political purposes, using them as pawns, nothing more. So you bet this is a high crime and misdemeanor. You bet he should be impeached. You bet that that is the tool that we have in the Constitution for the Congress to exercise its right to stand up and stop an executive branch that is trampling the American people and endangering them. 72,000 dead Americans. You all know the numbers. We can go through all the numbers. How about the text that I just got from a rancher in Texas? I'm getting seriously concerned about Title 42 ending. We've had 5 groups on us in the past 7 days, 6 groups if we count the last 10 days, 2 groups yesterday. It's like that on us where they've mostly been avoiding this place. It's a really bad sign. And no one, sheriff or DPS, is able to respond. What am I supposed to do? I can promise you Texans aren't going to put up with this anymore. And this body, this Congress, this Republican-led Congress needs to hold Alejandro Mayorkas accountable. He needs to be fired. He needs to be removed from office under the tools under the Constitution. These are lives that are at stake. And I'm proud to stand here with these guys to hold him accountable. It's purposeful. Don't forget that. It's purposeful. I yield back.
Thank you all for coming out today. This is a very serious issue, and we've been facing it for nearly 2 years now. When Secretary Mayorkas took over his role, he came out and for months declared they had a plan. Just give me time to implement my plan. Well, he did implement that plan, and that's what we've been screaming about for the last 2 years. And it's the willful violation of the law and malice against the people of the United States. I'm from Montana. I represent the entire state right now. And we are a northern border state with a southern border problem. I met with my attorney general, and the fentanyl cases, either confiscation or deaths that are taking place, have increased by 1,100% since Biden took office. This is unacceptable. It's destroying our nation. It's destroying a generation of young people, and that doesn't even include the human trafficking issues that we're dealing with that are ravaging our reservations. We have 7 reservations in Montana, and the additional increase in crimes that are taking place across the state that are completely attributable to all these problems that are coming from this open, porous southern border. I stand here very proudly with these people that are trying to bring law and order back to the southern border and to the United States of America. Thank you, and I would yield now to Carter. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, everybody here that's made an accusation, those accusations are true, and they're worth us all thinking about them in a very big way. I spent a long time in the courtroom trying to uphold our Constitution, and we build our cases on credible evidence. We need to take these accusations, using the tools that we have in our committees, to gather credible evidence, present that credible evidence to a listening Congress. I believe we have an impeachment against Mr. Mayorkas. So I'm supporting this because it's time to quit talking and start gathering evidence to get rid of the people who will not help keep our America safe when it's their duty. So I'm proud to appear with all these colleagues behind me, and every one of them, what they say, I agree with. Thank you.
Thank you, Judge Carter. I'm Ralph Norman from South Carolina. Folks, I wish all of you in the media could have seen a notebook of deaths that a retired agent showed us at a podcast. Page after page, front and back, of our young people being killed by fentanyl. And this president says this is not a problem? Really? The deaths of our children, our future, it's a problem. Not only do we have an invasion to the tune of 15 million before this administration's done, that's 5 football stadiums every 30 days, folks. 5 football stadiums being released in this country and being put in different areas all over America. We are all a border state now. It's time for Mayorkas to go. When asked the question, is the border secure? He said yes. Then we said, well, will you define unsecure? He didn't say a word. The man, truth is not in him. The country is at stake. I'm proud to join my colleagues to make this front and center stage. It's time for Mayorkas to get another job. Thank you so much. And I ask now Bob Gooden.
Thank you, Congressman Babin and Congressman Biggs, for leading this effort. You know, of all the crises created by the Biden administration, it's difficult to signal out which one is the worst of all the crises, but you could argue that the border invasion is the worst of all. 5 million illegals invading our country, not to mention the known gotaways. A million of those are known gotaways, those who are evading apprehension, invading capture. They don't want to be ID'd, they don't want to be fingerprinted, they don't want to be background checked because of their terrorist criminal ties or what they're trafficking across our border. Meanwhile, we've got Secretary Mayorkas lying to Congress and, more importantly, lying to the American people. I've been to the border 5 times in my first 2 years. I've never seen President Biden. I've never seen Vice President Harris. And we meet with Border Patrol. They tell you the Democrats don't come. They're not interested in coming because they don't want the American people to know about the invasion they're facilitating at our border, violating Article 4, Section 4 of the Constitution that said it's the responsibility of the federal government to keep the states safe from invasion. If anyone deserves impeachment, it's Secretary Mayorkas. We cannot let this go on for another 2 years. A Republican majority must impeach Secretary Mayorkas as the first step to beginning to secure our border. And now I turn it over to my colleague Jim Baird from Indiana.
Good afternoon. You know, a month ago, Secretary Mayorkas testified that the southern border is secure. And yet this weekend alone, the chief of the U.S. Border Patrol reported that there have been at least 16,000 migrants documented over the weekend, and that's 8,000 per day. For nearly 2 years, we've watched the crisis at our southern border, and while President Biden's Department of Homeland Security, under the leadership of Secretary Mayorkas, has made zero policy changes to secure this border. In a recent hearing, when asked by Representative Jim Jordan how many known or suspected terrorists have been released into our country after illegally crossing the southern border, and the Secretary said he didn't know. Border security is national security, and Secretary Mayorkas' management of the crisis in the southern border has threatened our national security. With less than 1 week before Title 42 expires, which will accordingly exacerbate the situation at our southern border, it's time for us to find a DA secretary that can take care of this situation. Thank you.
And now, welcome the former acting Immigration and Customs Enforcement Director, Tom Holman.
Good afternoon. I'm Tom Holman. I was the ICE director under President Trump. Look, I've been at this immigration enforcement since 1984. That's when I joined the Border Patrol. I climbed the ranks to be the first acting director of ICE that actually came up through the ranks. INS and Border Patrol used to be on the Department of Justice. After 9/11, they put it under DHS. I have worked for 5 attorney generals. I have worked for 9 secretaries of Homeland Security. I have worked for 6 presidents, starting with Ronald Reagan. Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas is the first president and first cabinet official that came into office and unsecured a border. Stone cold fact. Every president I've worked for, even Bill Clinton and Barack Obama, took some steps to secure the border because they understood, as you just heard, you can't have national security without border security. Alejandro Mayorkas unsecured the most secure border we ever had. I don't care what your opinion is on illegal immigration, but when you create a crisis this big that takes 70 to 80% of agents off the line, it creates a national security crisis. Border Patrol's arrested people from 161 countries. Many of these countries are sponsors of terrorism. They've arrested 116 of them trying to sneak in the country. There's over 1 million recorded gotaways. 161 countries, some that sponsor terrorism, over 1 million recorded gotaways. If you don't think a single one of those 1 million people gotaways came here to do us harm, came from a country that sponsored terrorism, then you're a fool. Just got to play the percentages. I don't know how many suspected terrorists have crossed the border since Joe Biden and Alejandro Mayorkas has been in power, but someday we're going to find out. It's going to be a bad day for America. What's happening on the border right now is the biggest national security failure since 9/11. That just scared the hell out of everybody.
Well, thanks, Tom.
Appreciate Tom's comments and Rodney's and Mark's here in a moment. But let me tell you, I had people tried in my court for negligent homicide, for willful, reckless disregard of human life. Well, that is not what's going on here. It is an intentional and knowing disregard for human life, for the protection of our country, and then we have had him come before Congress and lie under oath. That's perjury, and it is the kind of malfeasance for which he should be removed. Over 100,000 people dying of fentanyl that's come across our southern border. This has got to stop. If anyone cares about human life and human suffering, then why would this be encouraged? The perjury, the intentional and knowing, allowing murders with fentanyl, It's got to stop. That means he's got to be removed, and that needs to be business one on day one in the next Congress. I appreciate so much the efforts of everybody here. And Michael Cloud is next, my friend from Texas. Michael?
Secretary Mayorkas has got to go. There's no other way about it. The Secure Fence Act of 2016 tasks him with protecting and securing our border, maintaining operation control, and I quote, prevention of all unlawful entries into the United States, including entries by terrorists and other unlawful aliens, instruments of terrorism, narcotics, and other contraband. He's failed completely at this task. He's lied under oath about doing so. He's not only failed at doing it, he's worked to aid and abet cartels in the trafficking of humans and drugs into our communities. He's canceled the contracts that were signed in the previous administration that we appropriated funds for building infrastructure at the border and building a wall, building technology, putting all that in place. He's canceled the contracts when his job is to faithfully execute the laws that we pass. He's continued to squander his opportunity to secure our border. He's gone beyond just breaking and not fulfilling the law, but he even went as far as to the good men and women working to secure the border, has slandered them. We can talk about the horse incident where you had people protecting the border and doing their job, and he slandered their good intentions and them doing their job. He's failed at every single step of the way, and almost every day in my South Texas community, I get a text from some sheriff about another bailout, another stash house found where young men and women are abused, another fentanyl seizure. Today, the text came from my son's school, and this is what it said. The sheriff's office notified the campus of reports of illegal aliens in the area who may be armed and dangerous. This is happening in the communities in our United States because this secretary refuses to do his job and protect the communities in this country. It has to stop. He has to be removed.
I'm Doug LaMalfa from California, yet another porous border state. Look, we've all seen and heard about the numbers here. They're horrific. Indeed, I hate how it's called migrants by the press. It's an illegal immigrant invasion that is happening to our country. Mayorkas says, oh, hey, we're secure, not a problem. What is this, a Jedi mind trick? These are not the illegal immigrants you're looking for. Nothing to see here. Go on about your business. It's ridiculous. They're lying to the American people, and they think they're lying to us in Congress, but the American people are not being fooled by what they're doing. I visited my own border in San Ysidro, where they have a portal that works well. I visited with Mr. Biggs' district down there in Arizona, where they have gaps in the fence, and it isn't working at all. The people walk right past you, practically smiling. And they also have vans they go send to pick people up and bring them to the processing centers. Basically, welcome wagon to speed up the process to bring them into the country. The president last spring promised to fill some of the gaps in the fence where it was left unconstructed. Small gaps that would make the job for the Border Patrol much easier. Not a foot has been added that I know of. So instead, we have a situation where we're going to ask for impeachment. Why don't we have instead asked the president, asked the administration to remove Mayorkas? They removed the little dude with the stealing the suitcases here recently. Now we have millions of people basically coming into the country bringing their suitcase loads of stuff, and we're going to just let that go. That's a much bigger problem. I call on the Biden administration to remove Mayorkas, otherwise we'll do our job here when we get the majority in this place.
Hi, I'm Debbie Lesko from the great state of Arizona. Last week, President Biden visited my district. He visited the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation. And when he was asked, well, while you're here to this border state of Arizona, are you going to visit the border? He said, oh no, I have more important things to do. Well, I'm going to quote President Biden, what he often says, oh, come on, man. I mean, really. In under 2 years, Secretary Mayorkas has proven that he is nothing short of an abject failure. He has lied to Congress and the American people with his claim that the border is secure. He has not only allowed the invasion at our southern border to go unchecked, but he has actively made it worse. Over 4 million illegal immigrants have crossed our southern border under Secretary Mayorkas. That's more than twice the population of Phoenix, Arizona. And it's more than 4 times the population of the entire state of Delaware, where President Biden resides. Men, women, and children are being trafficked by criminal cartels. These cartels have also smuggled illegal, deadly drugs like fentanyl over our southern border and are killing thousands of Americans each and every day. For 2 years, Mayorkas has sat idly by and done nothing. He is complicit in these criminal enterprises. The evidence is clear. Mayorkas is unfit to serve as the Secretary of Homeland Security. His actions and inaction need to be investigated, and if evidence leads us there, he needs to be impeached. And with that, I'd like to turn it over to former acting U.S. Customs and Border Protection Commissioner Mark Morgan.
First of all, I want to say, as the former acting commissioner of United States Customs and Border Patrol, I am proud to stand here today shoulder to shoulder with every single congressional member that stands here today, along with former acting director of ICE, Tom Holman, and United States Border Patrol Chief Rodney Scott, calling for the impeachment of Secretary Mayorkas. Everybody standing here today took the same oath of office to uphold the Constitution and protect this country, this great country, from the vast, complex threats that face us every single day. We understand that the rule of law is not a catchphrase. It has meaning. It's one of the foundational core elements of this great country. We understand that our nation's sovereignty is worth protecting, and it means something, and we should not forsake that for political gain. And we know that protecting the safety and national security of this country should be our primary goal and our primary mission. Our oath demands that of us. American citizen demands that of us. And what you've heard today, in my opinion, makes a clear case. We don't need an investigation. Secretary Mayorkas needs to go. He has abdicated his responsibility. He has abandoned his oath. He is the antithesis of what the American people should demand in their Secretary of Homeland Security. He has served as this administration's chief architect of their open border policies that we know has resulted in drugs pouring across our open borders, killing Americans every single day. Criminal aliens pouring across our open borders, causing havoc throughout this great nation. The list goes on. Tom Holman talked about the national security threat. Literally, it's not hyperbolic to say the next sleeper cell could be in the United States planning the next terrorist attack, and we would have absolutely no idea, and that is in part because of Secretary Mayorkas' complete abdication of his constitutional responsibilities. How many more Americans have to die? How many more migrants have to die before we say enough is enough? He has lied to the American people. He has lied to Congress. He refuses to enforce the law. And what's really disgusting for me, this secretary intentionally and knowingly vilified his own men and women, the United States Border Patrol. He got up to the White House and used a bully pulpit, and he knew hours before that those Border Patrol agents didn't whip anybody. He knew it was a lie, and he still got out there and lied to the American people. It's disgusting. It's despicable. It's irresponsible. And I don't want to hear that, hey, what can we do? Look, the American people didn't vote for Secretary Mayorkas. They had no say in Secretary Mayorkas. He was placed there. Well, he can be removed, and he should be removed, and his reign of terror should end. And I hope on day one, come January, that every Republican member of the United States House of Representatives shows the same political courage, strength, and will of the men and women standing behind me, and they do what is necessary and remove this man and replace him with a Secretary of Homeland Security that's going to leave his ideology and his politics at the door and do his job to safeguard the security and national security of this country on day one. Thank you.
We thank everybody for coming today. We feel like we've kind of exhausted time. I'm sure that there are members here who would be willing to take individual questions as they're walking back to offices. But I just want to conclude by saying this. You've heard a vast array of charges and explanations about why we think Secretary Mayorkas needs to be impeached and removed. The reality is, there's nothing up here that hasn't been said that isn't factual. And we need to adjudicate Secretary Mayorkas. We have to do it in a proper way. We don't do it the way the other side does it. We're going to let him come in. We'll have due process. We'll conduct our investigation. But I am confident when that investigation is concluded, the facts that we've adduced today, and we've revealed to you today, which should not be a mystery to anybody whose eyes are open, they will agree that he should be impeached. With that, thank you so much.
Man, that guy walked right in front of your shot.
Oh, no worries.
One, two. 1, 2.